budget report. Administration will update the board on fiscal year 2018 budget development. This item provides an opportunity for the board's information and discussion.
Hey, welcome back. And we know a little bit more this time. This is good.
Yes, it is an exciting time, actually, as far as budget's concerned. Good afternoon, President Logan, Superintendent Thompson, and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to take a couple minutes today. We don't typically give a board presentation at the last June meeting, but we wanted to cover two particular items of importance as we really close out fiscal year 17 and dive into fiscal year 18 budget planning. So certainly we know a little bit more related to our budget timeline. Not a lot, but I did want to share that KSDE has told us that they will not release budget forms for us to prepare the fiscal year 18 budget until the Supreme Court rules. So that decision is going to make budget preparation extremely tight as far as actually walking through those forms, getting them completed, having all of the data ready for review. So at this point, the best case scenario we have, if the Supreme Court makes its decision and we get that notice relatively quickly and there are no changes, probably the very first time we'll actually have firm budget numbers would be the August 7th meeting. We're not going to probably be able to make a first review by July 24th. So that August 7th would be the review of the budget and the notice of hearing at the same time, with the August 21st public hearing and potentially adoption of the fiscal year 18 budget. Now, that timeline changes depending on what the Supreme Court decides. So this is what we're planning at this point, but obviously all bets are off the table depending on what happens here after July 18th. As we're preparing then for fiscal year 18 and knowing that our ability to have a lot of discussion is going to be pretty tight, we did want to not only respond to Senator Rogers' request for what would we do with new money, but we also want to make sure that we have fully embraced the board's direction on budget priorities as we move into fiscal year 18. So this is kind of our first discussion slide, if you will, as far as what we believe we've heard from discussions at the board table, what we heard from the superintendent search, that we've kind of tried to put those needs into a one-sheet summary of where we think new monies would be focused, at least for the board's discussion. And I kind of wanted to walk through those quickly. You'll notice that the calendar item is not listed because that decision had already been made related to fiscal year 18. So that certainly would be an item we would want to have for a future discussion, but kind of for budget planning needs. To give me some direction, I've left that off for the time being. So what we're looking at as far as our understanding of budget priorities would be certainly recruitment and retention through compensation, looking at our needs related to current employees and certainly the ability to get out and recruit for the vacancies that we have and any turnover that we would have in the future. We know we need to be competitive. This is a big priority for us. At-risk programs, we've had some discussions. The new focus on accountability related to at-risk will require us to pay some attention in this area, including graduation rates, the K-3 literacy initiatives that we're looking at. So at-risk programs will be a budget priority, we believe. Curriculum and textbook needs, we've heard that mentioned time and time again. Student technology, our deferred maintenance needs, pre-K expansion, knowing that getting in front of kids as early as possible makes a difference. Professional development, this is an area that had been cut over the years. I think we'll need to look at our needs in this area. The expansion of technical education, strengthening STEM and other academic programs, career and academic counselors working with students towards individual plans of study, and then the continued work with student social emotional needs. So this was a place to kind of start some discussion. Certainly we don't need answers today, but this might be a good opportunity to digest this list and then give us some feedback on, is the list complete? is there a ranking? Are we missing anything important that the board feels needs to have some attention as we get into fiscal year 18 planning?
Okay, and you'd like our feedback, Lynn?
Well, I have two questions, may have more. The first one is on the previous slide, but the second one is on this one, so you can leave it here for a second. The individual plans of study, that's a new part of the Kansas CAN, the State Board of Education strategic plan. What, we haven't really talked about those, but what are we anticipating? Again, it's a good thing, but at the same point, there's no funding that comes with that. What are we expecting? What are we thinking cost-wise? Is this the first stage, and kind of when is that due, so to speak? When is that required?
Well, that's a great question. We actually have a committee and team that's looking at some of the tools that have been available to be able to use for the individualized plans. And the tool that the state recommends and the tool that we have decided that it's probably will best meet our needs is called career cruising. And at this time, what we're doing is we're looking at the need of the district and who all will be utilizing it, because there is a cost to it. It's pretty significant, quite frankly. And we will then be bringing that back to you because this is a requirement, part of the new vision for the state. And so we will be bringing that back to you. We actually have it. We're waiting for some more numbers to come in for the bids that we have out for that. And as soon as we have that, we'll let you know. But it is not an inexpensive, again, mandate from the state.
So I assume that would allow, not only teachers to access it, but parents and, people that are connected with the child. So we'd also be able to figure out if parents are accessing that, figure out a cost-effective way for them to do that as well, if they don't have access, those kinds of things. So, and when is that required by the state? Do you know? Is it a couple years down the road still, or is it pretty quick?
It is pretty quick. We actually are going to be in our first stages of finding out where we rank according to where we are today on a rubric that they have. And then for next year, we will be needing to implement those things and have goals in each of the areas that they're looking at. And then we will then be judged upon that in the following school term. Yes.
Okay.
And we will have some in some of the workshops that we begin to have. We'll really dive into all of the plans and all of the requirements that are going to be accountable for the district for accreditation, and we'll be bringing all that back as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. And then, Susan, the second question I have on the first one is the mill levy due to the Sedgwick County. That's a state date that is set. Have we had any discussions with them as to how late that could possibly go? My concern is if we go to a special session in late July, that's going to be tough to meet because we have to have how many days for public hearing and notification?
We need that 2-week period.
We need a 2-week period. So even if we got the 25th, we're really talking the 10th is when, by the deadline that the state would have to work. If the state goes over the 10th, they'd have to make an extension of that deadline of the 25th, if that's the case. And I guess that would be my question of the county: is that even possible to delay that at all? What does that do to their time schedule to put mill levies together and things like that? So
I haven't had a meeting. That's kind of my next step with Sedgwick County. I have reached out to them in via email, and of course via email the first response was, well, we expect it by August 25th. So yeah. I think we'll probably have to do a little bit more of a sit down once we have a little bit more information to say, okay, realistically, this is probably the best we're going to be able to do. What are our options? How many days? If we're a little bit late, what's the consequences?
I mean, it affects every district, so it's going to affect every county and every business. So I guess, and I'm not sure if any county clerk would really want to give the state any longer, because we tend to take every day of a deadline that we can possibly take. So good. All right, thank you.
Joy?
Thanks, Lynn, for asking that first question, because I was wondering, is that like a date and statute, or what are we going to do? My first question is, can you just maybe provide that list to us by email or something so we can take some time to think through it and think about where the ranking might be, or if there is a ranking? And then the one item I just sort of thought about is, through budget cuts over the last several years, we have dropped down a lot of our parents as teachers, or work with parents to include them in the education of their children. And we know, statistically speaking, that parents' involvement in education of their child is a much higher, not just a little higher, but top 5 or 6 indicators of how a child will do have to do with the parents' involvement in that process. So I wonder if that might be something to think about as a item to consider.
We will
get new
definitely
money.
add that to the list. And when we add that to the list, whenever you guys are the list that we have here, we're going to add to it, and then we'll send that out to you along with the presentation here, so that you'll have all of the ideas.
Thank you.
Okay. I just have one question, because obviously we're still working a little bit in the dark. We don't have a number yet. And how is that affecting our negotiations with our staff? Because we can't start till we have some kind of...
To my knowledge, neither negotiations have begun, but there's been some discussion, at least as of first dates. I don't know if Superintendent Thompson has any further information.
We all have just kind of been patient, and we thank UTW for that as well. What we will do in the next week is I'll have Tom to reach out to the union, and we can then decide and then get back with you of when we will start. We've kind of just been on a pause because we're just kind of waiting, but we can reach out to see if we want to wait a little bit or if we want to resume, and we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, because, school year is starting soon, and everybody is anxious about that, and it's not our fault. I mean, we're just kind of caught in the limbo. Okay, I am seeing no other comments or questions. Okay, very good. We're glad. Thank you for giving us this list, because I think all of us are really wanting to make sure we get the right things as the first few items, so that, because there's not going to be nearly enough money to run all the way to the bottom with everything.
What we get, you can see by this list of needs, plus some of the others I'm sure that will come up. There won't be enough, but at least we can get started.
Absolutely, and that's a very good sign, considering this is my 7th year on the board, and the past 6 I've had to cut.
It's
so
the right
it's
conversation
nice.
to have. So, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Lynn?
I guess I wanted to add one other thing. I have been hearing a lot lately from different people that are excited about us adding some of these programs, and I do have to remind them that we've had cuts of almost $98 million, and the current plan is only 16, 17, maybe 18 million, which is a big chunk, but that's going to be very difficult to replace everything right away. So, so I think we have to create realistic expectations as to what we can do. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There certainly isn't enough money to put us back with, but at least we're on the right trail. So, thank you. Next item.